Hello, this is Joseph Zoll. I referred elsewhere on our channel to the Laffer curve. This was created by Arthur Laffer and is the foundation of modern fiscal conservatism. It is supposed to balance the budget, but backfires. It works in reverse of its own goal. Laffer curve says that the way to balance the budget is for the government to bring in less revenue. Expenses can stay the same, and the budget will balance. Consider the argument. An individual is in debt and getting deeper into debt every month. With a full-time job and some overtime, they're still spending more than they take in, living beyond their means, and in serious financial difficulty. If we apply the concept of the Laffer curve, the solution is not to cut spending. She can leave that where it is. Instead, she has to cut down on the income, stop accepting overtime, or even better, quit the full-time job and take a part-time job. The problem is not a lack of income to cover expenses. The problem is she is making too much money to be able to balance her budget. Huh? But that's the budget concept on an individual level with the Laffer curve. Fiscal conservatism holds that the most important thing is to cut taxes. This way, they argue, people will spend more money and that will create jobs. Bigger payrolls will be taxed, corporations will make more profits, they'll be taxed, and so on. This then will balance the budget. Somewhere along the line, it became ideology that it was most important to cut taxes on the top 1%, top 5%, top 10%, and not so much the middle class and the working poor. The argument continues that because the economy will be doing so much better, there will be a trickle-down effect for people not so well off financially. Unemployment will go down, employment will go up, business will expand, and everybody will be happy. As to the tax cuts for the middle class and the working poor, despite all the publicity and hype of the time of the tax cuts, they get token tax cuts that nobody really notices at all by the time tax time comes around, except for the people in the top 1%, top 5%, top 10% who get huge tax cuts and are well aware of what they're getting. I put that point to the test in 2017. The Trump administration had pushed through the 11th major tax cut primarily for the wealthiest Americans, with some small cuts for others. There was a lot of hype about how this would help everyone. In April 2018, tax time, I asked some friends who are middle class if they knew how much the Trump tax cuts were saving them. The only answer I got was no. The tax cuts for the middle class and the working poor were so small nobody really noticed. The billionaires, I have no doubt, noticed and are heavily supporting more tax cuts for themselves. I do have a video, Money, the Mindset of the Wealthy, and I will put a link to that up at the end of this video. Proof this backfires. Ronald Reagan ran for president in 1980 saying he would balance the budget by applying fiscal conservative principles, which meant Laffer curve economics. It became called Reaganomics. George H.W. Bush, who was also running for the Republican nomination in 1980, called it voodoo economics. So Reagan won, applied the Laffer curve concepts, and successfully doubled the national debt in 8 years. We went through the two Reagan recessions and the Reagan stock market crash of 1987. We are still waiting for the trickle down to start. So in 1989, George H.W. Bush became president, but now continued the same policies as Reagan, which he had condemned as voodoo economics. He too doubled the national debt, but now in only 4 years, and we did have the two recessions. In 1993, Bill Clinton was president and applied sound liberal economic principles and balanced the budget. Then he put us into surplus, and by the end of his second term, we began paying off bonds issued during the Vietnam 30 years earlier. Prosperity and good economic conditions prevailed. In 2001, George W. Bush took office and reverted to the previous failed policies, setting us back into deficit, doubling the national debt, the third and fourth Bush recessions, the great Republican stock market crash of 2008, and the worldwide financial meltdown that resulted. The U.S. is a substantial component of the world economy, and what happens here can have worldwide effects. And with the deficit, bonds had to be refinanced. Under George W. Bush, bonds for the Vietnam, 30 years old, were renewed for another 30 years. So we will be paying interest on the Vietnam for 60 years, and we will still owe the debt. If we are in surplus in the 2030s, we could begin finally paying them off. Otherwise, we'll have to refinance them for a total of 90 years of interest, and this just didn't have to be. but that is a summary of 20 years of conservative and liberal fiscal policies. President Trump did award Arthur Laffer the Presidential Medal of Freedom in 2019 for what he called his contributions to economic policy. During his first term, President Trump did apply a Laffer curve and ran up $8 trillion of debt, increasing the national debt by 1/3. So the effects of these policies have become very serious, with our national debt approaching $40 trillion. If you'd like to find out more about the Laffer curve, there's plenty of information available on the internet as well as public libraries. Check your sources to make sure they're reliable sources. As an introduction, taking you to the next step from our video today, Wikipedia does have a good entry on Laffer curve, so you might want to refer to that. We also have some free resources for you available, which are listed in the description. I hope you enjoyed today's video, found it informative, and if you did, please subscribe, please give us a like, and click the notifications bell so you'll be notified of the new videos that we'll have coming up. Thank you very much for joining me today.